Today, we are getting right into the modern neuroscience of how to conquer fear and trauma. We're going to look at the biology of how fear gets wired into our brains and, more importantly, the actual practical tools science has found to help us rewire it.
So let's just jump right in with the big question that science has been trying to answer for decades. If you have some deep-seated fear, I don't know, public speaking, flying, spiders, whatever, can you just go into your brain and delete it? Like dragging a file to the trash on your computer?
Well, the latest research is pretty clear on this, and the answer is a big, fat no. You don't just delete a fear response. What you do instead, and this is way more empowering, I think, is you build a new, stronger, positive response right alongside it. So the goal isn't erasure, it's replacement.
Okay, so if we're going to talk about replacing fear, we've got to get really clear on what we're actually dealing with, right? It gets thrown in the same bucket as stress and anxiety all the time, but from a biological standpoint, it's its own unique thing.
Think about it this way. Stress is just this general alarm going off in your body. Anxiety, that's when you point that stress at something in the future. But fear is the specific, intense recipe that takes a little bit of both and cooks them into this very concrete feeling in the here and now. You can be stressed about a big project deadline, but you feel fear when you see a car swerving towards you. See the difference?
And what happens when that very specific fear program gets stuck on repeat? When it starts activating at times when there's no real threat? When it's just not helpful anymore? Well, that right there is what science calls trauma. It's basically a fear program running at the wrong time. So let's pop the hood and take a look at the actual machinery that creates that intense, physical feeling of fear. It all starts with this pretty cool balancing act happening in your nervous system.
You can kind of picture it like a seesaw. On one side, you've got your sympathetic system. That's your alert or go system. It gets you ready for action. And on the other side, you have the parasympathetic system. That's your calm down, rest and digest system. And your body is just constantly, subtly adjusting this balance all day long.
So when your brain perceives a threat, it basically slams on the gas pedal of a system called the HPA axis. And it's this super fast three-step chain reaction. First, the hypothalamus acts like a little alarm system. That sends a signal to the pituitary gland, which then releases hormones. And finally, your adrenal glands get the message and just flood your body with adrenaline and cortisol. And that is what turns a simple thought into a full-body experience that can stick around for hours.
And at the very heart of this whole thing, you've got the amygdala. This little almond-shaped part of your brain is basically the central command for your threat reflex. It's constantly scanning all the info coming from your senses and your memories, and if it finds a match for danger, bam! It's the one that pulls the trigger on that whole HPA axis we just talked about.
But, and this is a huge but, fear isn't just some uncontrollable reflex. We humans have this incredibly powerful tool that lets us have a say in what happens next. And that tool is narrative, the story we tell.
See, your brain has these two systems kind of competing with each other. You have the bottom-up reflex, which comes from the amygdala. That's the raw, automatic physical feeling, the racing heart, the tight chest. But then you also have top-down control, which comes from your prefrontal cortex. And that is where we assign meaning. It's where we tell ourselves a story about that feeling.
And this is maybe the most important takeaway of this whole explainer. You can't really argue with the feeling itself. The sweaty palms, the adrenaline rush, that stuff is automatic. There's really no negotiating what fear feels like. But, and this is everything, you can absolutely negotiate what it means. And that right there is where all our power to change it lies.
If you like this kind of content, make sure to subscribe.
Which brings us right back to that core idea we started with. If you can't just delete the feeling, how do you change the meaning? Well, you do it by replacing the old, scary story with a new one. Neuroscientist AndrewHuberman puts it perfectly here. The entire modern scientific approach to dealing with fear and trauma is built on this single idea. You don't try to fight or erase the old memory. You build a new, more positive one right next to it, and you make that one stronger. So how do our brains learn these fear connections in the first place? Well, it goes back to a classic idea, Pavlovian conditioning. Remember Pavlov's dogs, right? He rang a bell, then gave them food, and eventually, just ringing the bell made them drool. Our brains do the same thing, learning to connect something totally neutral, like an elevator or a crowded room, with a powerful fear response.
But here's where it gets kind of wild. Our fear system is so incredibly efficient,
it's built for survival after all, that it doesn't need all of that repetition. It can forge a powerful, lifelong link from just one single event. It's called one-trial learning, and it's why a single bad experience can stick with us for so long.
Okay, so that's the theory. But let's get to the good stuff. How do we actually do this? What are the real-world tools we can use to get in there and start the rewiring process?
Well, pretty much all effective therapies boil down to this core two-step logic. Step 1, you have to diminish the power of the old experience. You gotta turn down the volume on that original fear response. And then step 2, once the volume is down, you actively create a new, positive association. You write a new ending to the story. And there are a few major toolkits out there to do this. You've got your behavioral therapies, like prolonged exposure that use detailed retelling to weaken that old response. Then there are some really cutting-edge drug-assisted approaches using things like ketamine or MDMA to create brain states where this relearning can happen much, much faster. And finally, there are a ton of self-directed tools, like specific breathing exercises or journaling that can help you rebuild your whole stress system from the ground up.
So, if you remember one thing from all this, let it be this simple but really profound idea. The fear that pops up in your body, that's a reflex. It's automatic. But learning to manage it, to write a new story around it, and to ultimately replace it, that's not a reflex. That is a trainable skill.
Which really leaves us with just one final powerful thought. Since the science shows us that we're the ones holding the pen, that we have the power to write the story, the only question left is, what new story are you going to teach your brain?